All right. Hello, everybody. I'm letting people file in here. Actually, let me just close this out so I can see what I'm working with. So as people join us, I'm Jamie. I'll be your host today for Weathering the Great Resignation: Strategies, Tips, and Tools to Keep Your Reps Engaged. Now, it is one of the hottest topics in every piece of content, every conversation that we're having, especially here at Ambition with what we do. So thank you so much for joining us. And this panel, I'm going to shut out soon and introduce them because they're so great. But before I do that, housekeeping, we would never host this and not record it. So we are recording it. We will send you the recording if you need to hop off, if you want to share it with everyone you've ever met, which you will. We got you covered. So we will be sending that to your inbox. You're also muted. So if you have anything to say, if you have questions, comments, some of you, ask great questions at registration, but if you have anything else to say, type it in the chat, type it in the Q&A. I'm gonna be yammering, but I'll try to scoop those up as we go. If I don't see it when you chat it in, I'll get to it at the end there. So we will reserve time for questions. And yeah, kind of without further ado, I do want to introduce the panel here. First up, but certainly not, first up, I'll just start with Larry. Larry Long Jr., founder and CEO of LLJR Enterprises. He's got his own thing going on now. Larry, thank you so much. Welcome.
Jamie, happy to be here. Esteemed panelists, happy to be here. Founder, CEO, and that's Chief Energy Officer of LLJR. I can't wait for this conversation.
Absolutely. Fire. I mean, he brought his own mic, guys. He brought his own mic. Melissa, you don't need to have a gold microphone. You have great things to say, I know. So Melissa Murray, SVP of Sales at Hootsuite. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. The topic is front of mind for me all the time. So I'm here to share experiences, but also learn from everyone else.
Absolutely. And next up, we have Nadia Rashid, SVP of Sales at Seismic. Welcome, Nadia.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. And honestly, just it's a privilege to be on this panel with all these great folks. So thank you.
All right. And thank you for joining us. And last, but certainly not least, that's what I was trying to say, I think, for Larry, Jennifer Brannigan. She is the CRO at Pendo.
Awesome. Nice to meet everyone. I'm so pumped to be here. I have been at Pendo for about 10 weeks. So I'm drinking from the fire hose, but I'm really excited to share some experiences and learn from this esteemed panel myself and hopefully pick up some of that Larry Long Jr. energy.
Man, I was about to say, speaking of fire hoses, just let us have it, man. I need that energy going into this. And it sounds like a lot of people do. So to tee up the topic today, before I kick it over to my first question, unless you've been living under a rock, we have seen headlines almost to a sensationalist point. We can kind of dig into that in a second here, but many reports just about the state of work that is top of mind, not just for us in sort of webinar circles or in the technology space, but really globally. We're all talking about people leaving jobs, people sort of having this great sort of epiphany of what am I doing? Where am I going? Am I happy? Is this what I want to be doing? And that sort of topic has been dubbed return to work, which we will dig into here in a second. But regardless of sort of anyone's opinions, one thing that is fact is that Microsoft did a study, the 2021 Work Trend Index, and dubbed what is happening right now the Great Resignation, which is how we got our title for today, stating that over 41%, so almost half of the workforce, so not just sort of these types of jobs, I think it's all types of jobs, are considering leaving their employer this year. So within this year. This is also kind of an auspicious week. I don't know about you guys, but it feels like literally even since I talked to you guys maybe earlier this week about this webinar, I'm very curious about the ride we're all about to go on together in this conversation, because I feel like things are just moving so fast with, people saying, yes, we're going to open, no, we're not going to open, going back and forth. So would love to dig into that as well today, because there's just a lot of moving parts to this. But one thing remains, that we are all very dedicated to figuring out ways that we can keep our reps engaged, that we can keep our revenue orgs intact. And we're going to talk about that and dig into it. So my first question, Melissa, when we met earlier this week, you said something that I really hadn't thought about, but because I'm just seeing return to work everywhere. It's just sort of it along with new normal, or just the phrases, of the day. But that in and of itself, you said, is kind of insulting. And I hadn't really thought about that. It's like return to work. I never stopped working. In fact, I got COVID at one point. It was very mild. I was just at my house, kept working. That probably wouldn't have happened if we were still going into the office. And so I am very curious with you. So with Hootsuite, you guys are a Canadian company. You yourself are not in Canada, which is, you can talk about here in a second. But I'm very curious what the conversations are specifically for you guys right now when it comes to how you're going to get people psyched for the change and how they work again. So we got everybody on board with how we needed to work last year. How do we get them to return to work? How do we change mindsets? And what are those conversations like? Bonus question, can you even go to Canada? I actually Googled it yesterday. I was like, can she even go? Like, not just should she go, can she go meet her coworkers? So kick us off there, because I am very curious what's up.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for that question. And as we have all been talking about return to work, like it just started kind of feeling weird to me because like you said, we are all working. And when we say to our team members, like, how are you feeling about returning? They're like, hey, what do you think I've been doing all this time? And so I think we have to be very careful because our words matter. And what we say to people lets them think what our perception is of what they've been doing all of this time. And I think one of the reasons we're seeing the Great Resignation is because people are exhausted from just living and breathing work, and they want a change of scenery. They want to change the monotony. And so Hootsuite, I would say we're a global company headquartered in Vancouver. And we, through the pandemic, like lots of companies, we really expanded our talent pool. And so, like you said, I'm here in New Jersey, and we have lots of people who have joined all over the world. And that has really changed how we think about what a return to the office looks like. And we spend some time talking to our people and understanding, like, what are they comfortable with? What is the way that they want to kind of adapt their work style? I don't think it's about moving backwards to the way we were doing it before. It's actually moving forwards to a new way of doing it. And so we are going forward with a distributed workforce strategy, which will allow us to continue to take advantage of exceptional people, no matter where they are in the world. And for the people who want to be coming back to the office, we have reimagined our office space so that it is a more collaborative environment, not something where everybody comes in every day and sits at the same desk, but people will be in and out and coming in for a couple meetings and going back home or going to the coffee shop. And so we're really meeting people where they are and how they want to interact now. And I think that's been the key for us all along, is constant communication with our people and adapting our strategies and our future approaches to what they're telling us that we need or they need. And I think this is going to be really important for companies as they recruit, because people have different expectations now for how they work.
Absolutely. No, and it's so fascinating. I think the one through line of chatting with all of you before we hopped on is that everyone has a slightly different approach, but it all seems very centered on I'm glad you're here, because it's all centered on communication and how we stay aligned. And so I think we'll see that as a through line as we get through, but thank you so much for that insight. So Jennifer, you on the flip side, this beautiful background is not in your home. You are in the office in Raleigh at Pendo HQ. So first and foremost, when we chatted, and you just threw out a number before we hopped on that blew my mind, but it's an understatement that Pendo grew like crazy over the last year. And I know you're new to the org, but you have a huge number of people on your staff that do not know the Pendo sort of in-office experience just yet. It sounds like you as an exec are there and you're sort of living and breathing, drinking from the fire hose, as you say, and experiencing that in-office culture, and that's appealing to you. But what are the plans to, and you don't, I mean, if it's changed since Monday, maybe it has, I don't know, I'd be very curious, but what's it been like for you to both sort of hire and sort of tell that Pendo in-person story and get them bought in and pumped about that, knowing that that's the goal, to get them to go back and really engage in that way? And also, what is the focus as the CRO, sort of the newly minted CRO, of walking your leaders? You're in charge of making sure that the entire sales force understands, our revenue org understands, what an in-office reopening can look like. And that's a very big responsibility. So I'd love your thoughts on just how you're hanging in there. But also, how do you get people excited about that? And what's that look like?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll share the number that I shared with you before. So in the last 6 months, the revenue organization at Pendo has hired 240 people. So that's not even counting people prior to that who started during COVID, but we're a rocket ship right now in this exponential growth. I mean, culture becomes more important than ever. First of all, ensuring that you're still hiring against your culture and your values, but really, to your point, helping make sure that these individuals who are starting don't miss out on that special sauce that makes Pendo such a beautiful place to work. And part of that does come from the in-office culture, but a lot of that is driven through the people. And while people aren't in the office, the culture still permeates through the individuals that you work with. And so we've been very deliberate in making sure that our new hires feel the Pendo love from day one from their new teammates. And actually, day zero, we send out an all company announce when we hire someone, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon, reaching out on LinkedIn, welcoming them to Pendo. I think I got about 350 connection requests the day my announcement went out at Pendo, which was a month before I started. I was like, whoa. But that is what really, really maintains the culture. It's the people. And so everything that we've done has really been through that lens of maintaining that connectivity to the culture and to the people. So as an example, rebooting our new hire orientation to ensure that people went through in cohorts where they have their own discrete Slack channel, do collaboration exercises, do team building virtually, rather than just learning the product and the processes, getting to know the people. Secondly, aligning them with pen pals. So giving them someone else in the organization who's their new hire buddy. Yeah. Reach out, have a virtual coffee, get to know them. And then finally, and I think most importantly, Pendo is a very flat organizational structure. Our CEO is so accessible, our execs are so accessible. So making sure that even when we're not in office, we're maintaining that. So Todd, our CEO, he does a 60-day check-in with every new hire. And if he finds things that are worrisome or things to be notable, we all talk about it as an exec team.
I love that. And I think that is such a great reminder, because we have sort of lost that. We're not all in the same room necessarily anymore. So you can't just say like, hey, CEO, come over and give so-and-so a pat on the back. Like, being really intentional, I think is so smart. I love that. Nadia, so you, I know, have a similar, probably more similar, it sounds like, set up right now as Melissa. So you guys are not all back in the office. You are traveling a little bit, but you guys are all still distributed at this point. And I'd love to learn more about just what does that look like? What are you guys discussing right now about, is it going to be more of a hybrid? Is it the goal for everyone to kind of go back? What is that? But specifically, when we talk about hybrid and moving forward and the new normal, a lot of it is about flexibility. I think it's sounding like in the hiring process, a lot of feedback. I recently was on a webinar with the CRO at Intuit, and he was saying that one of the biggest factors of attrition on their side, and just that he was seeing as he talks to people, is people worried about flexibility. They've now gotten accustomed to childcare in certain ways. They've gotten accustomed to certain sort of mechanisms that they're dealing with there. And so in your seat, you being over quite a few people and sort of managing managers and managing frontline leaders, how have these discussions sort of filtered down into one-on-ones? Like, how are you able to, sort of enable your managers to have these conversations? How are those going? What do those feel like? And did those things change over time? Did the way that you guys coach and meet change as a result of COVID? And are you going to keep some of those things as you go back in office?
Yeah, great question. So what I would say is, historically we would do one-on-ones in person, over coffee, over drinks. Like it would be very casual, right? I mean, historically we've all lived in different places, but we've had hubs all over the US. So like my mid-market team, they're in the office today. They're doing an all-day QBR. All of them went in person. The manager went in person. And so what we're really trying to promote here at Seismic is to ensure that everyone, regardless of their comfort level, like they feel that this is an environment that they can speak up where, look, I'm not comfortable going in, or I really need this time at home with my kids and I don't mind dialing in. We want to make it as flexible as possible. So I would even say, pre-pandemic, I really was one that wanted to encourage flexibility, right? I am trying to drive a lot of female talent to my teams. And one of the things that often come up is I'm a mom, or I'm embarking on, being a mother soon. And I would like a little bit of flexibility around that. What does that look like in your environment? And so I think, flexibility and communication is really key in terms of expectations, like mutual expectations, like what makes it a great environment for them. Everyone says, yes, I want to work for a company that has great culture. And I'm like, that's great, but what does that mean to you specifically? Right. So I think figuring that aspect out is really important, because flexibility to me is totally different than what it is to someone on my team. But to answer your question, as it relates to like how one-on-ones have changed, I typically ask people, let me know how you like to receive feedback, right? And I think we understand that. We know like, hey, you got to communicate it, you have to verbalize it, all of that. But what type of setting is the best? So I have a new hire that started. He's a frontline leader. He's great. I asked him, I said, literally fill out this form. It was 10 simple questions. When do you like to have heavy conversations? And so he said, in the morning, typically. What's the type of environment? He said, I usually like to go on a walk while I'm getting that type of feedback. It helps me release, it helps me digest. I take notes on my phone. And that's the way I like to receive it. And so I think that just understanding what works for other people, I think makes total sense, because you don't have that element any longer of going into an office or, hey, let's go grab a coffee and let's really dive in deep here. So understanding what that means for the other individual and how they like to be coached, and when are the best times to have one-on-ones, and when the conversations maybe are a little bit more challenging. Do you prefer to do that on a Monday? Do you want to do it on a Wednesday? Because historically, I would be someone like, nope, I'm doing it on my time. I'm doing it this way, this way, this way. But you also have to be understanding. I can't call someone at 9 a.m. if that's right when they drop their child off at school, or they don't receive information well at that time. And so I think we as leaders have to pivot and understand that it's also, it's always been a two-way street. Yeah. But I think we're more cognizant of it these days.
I think that is such a great point. And, especially when we talk about, people wanting to leave, perhaps that is going to be, it sounds like a thing that kind of would keep me invested and be like, hey, these people are actually listening to me. And I think that's very, very key. So Nadia, you actually touched on something interesting, which is, as things have shifted, as you get that feedback, you're having these conversations, people are, taking notes on their phone, they're doing this kind of stuff, but that sort of sparked the idea of how are we using technology? That's part of like what I want to talk about today too. One of the biggest shifts that we saw over the past year, and really I think not by design actually, but everyone on this call sells software or is responsible for selling software. And in some ways, either we serve the sort of rep to, consumer side, or we, for instance, at Ambition, we represent the, manager to rep relationship. Seismic, it's, enablement to rep sort of relationship, and so on. And so, I think it's been really fascinating, and probably some of that Pendo growth is from people last year realizing, oh, wow, we definitely do not have the tool stack that we need to virtually stay on top of both of these conversations, external and internal. And so, Larry, you're in this really, really interesting place as a consultant now. So you used to be in the trenches. Larry has become a rock star. It will be obvious when he starts talking more on this webinar. But Larry has now goes around, travels around, and is a consultant meeting with tons of different leaders, sales leaders, trying to get them on board. So I would love from your perspective, Larry, from the bird's eye view, what are people changing and doing as they're hiring and as they're coming into those sales kickoffs that you are getting invited to? What are sort of their, their focus? I know keeping people fired up, they're calling you. I don't blame them. But also, what are they doing to manage performance? What are they doing to take those conversations that might have been, to Nadia's point, more organic and sort of put process around them so that they, things are trackable outside of just using Salesforce? And then recognition, like what are the mechanisms that people are using to replace that pat on the back from the CEO that you're seeing out there?
Yeah, great point, Jamie. Great question, and excellent points by the panel talking about communication and flexibility, meeting people where they're at. And I mean, whether you're in B2C or whether you're in B2B, my man Kevin Dorsey says we're all in P2P. We're in the people to people game. So yes, great point in terms of the best organizations are leveraging technology to help them, to propel them, to assist them, not as a crutch to lean back. No, we're going to lean in and use technology to really get that teamwork and get that care as leaders. People want to know that we care. We're talking about that Great Resignation. That's the quickest way to lose your top reps, is to show them that you don't care and to not tell them that you care. So you talked about the tools. I heard Slack was mentioned earlier. You talked about CRM. There's a ton of CRMs out there. Whatever it is that you use, you got to make sure that you maximize it. I mean, I've had the awesome just opportunity to speak to different organizations, and each one is so unique, but the best ones really leverage that technology. You talked about recognition. I know I've had experience with Ambition. I appreciate y'all sponsoring this. Just being able to let folks know that, hey, number one, we care in those one-on-ones, being able to let people know that we keep score. I'm at the top of the leaderboard. Let's raise the roof. Come on, Cletus. And then just really being able to engage, because an employee that's not engaged is an employee that's not maximizing their capacity, their ability. So I've seen a wide spectrum, but the best organizations are really using tech and tools as a way to boost, and they're able to really strengthen those relationships, those interactions with their reps, with their leaders, their managers, you name it. They're clicking on all cylinders.
There you go. Melissa, I know when we chatted, you sort of mentioned a couple of like mission critical tools that you have brought. And actually, I'm going to go off script a little bit. Any tools that you guys have brought to your organizations, especially Jennifer and Melissa, who are new, and then Nadia, though you are not new to Seismic, did you guys adopt? Did you get into the thick of last year and go, oh, this is a huge gap for us? But also, I know Seismic has also had some meteoric growth over the past year too, just because sales enablement was an unsung hero and a bit of a gap. So yeah, I would love just general thoughts on that question of tools that maybe you had to adopt, tools that maybe you brought over, and then what is sort of mission critical to making sure that your reps, you know what they're doing. I know some of you use Gong and things like that. So just walk me through kind of what that looks like. And we can start with you, Melissa, and then anyone else chime in.
Yeah, so I was really lucky coming into Hootsuite, where Hootsuite has a very robust sales tech stack. So everything that allows us to help empower our reps to understand where they are along the sales cycle, Gong, so we can really embrace coaching. And an investment we made recently was into Gainsight, because we just revisited our guiding principles. And one of our guiding principles is customer obsessed. And our organization wanted to hold us to a higher standard than we were, and we were saying customer obsessed, but were we really? And so getting the tech that allows us to really understand the value that our customers are getting has really been game changing, not just for our customers, but for our people, because our people feel genuine and authentic in saying we're customer obsessed, because now they feel like the customer is getting that experience with us. And to build on something Larry was talking about on people and investing in people and making sure that they understand that they matter. The first thing when I joined in January was I set up this training for all of my leaders with Simon Sinek's organization on creating a culture where everyone matters. And that is our mantra. We want everyone in the organization to feel like they matter to the organization. And just because we're getting bigger doesn't mean that they matter any less. And so we want people to feel our arms around them, like they matter, and having these unique conversations with them about what it is that they want to accomplish at Hootsuite and in their career.
I love that. What about you guys? Going off the cuff.
I'm happy to chime in here.
Yeah.
So, one thing when I first came in that I realized was that Pendo grew so rapidly that we didn't really build the infrastructure around it to ensure that our sales team members were incredibly well supported and enabled to do their job successfully. And so I've been focusing in on less of the tech tools and more of the human tools to come in. I'm hiring a VP of sales enablement. We've more than tripled that team. We're really excited to have that so that we can ensure that our reps are set up for success in their roles. Secondly, we're building up our learning and development function. When we're growing this rapidly, we want to be able to promote people from within. We want to be able to give them the skills that they need to become the future leaders of Pendo. And then finally, I can't take credit for this because this was here when I got here, but it's a really, really incredible tool as it relates to just keeping your finger on the pulse of how your employees are feeling. It's called 15-5. And basically what it does is employees can check in at the end of each week, rate how they're feeling on a scale of 1 to 5, and share it with their manager or share it publicly. And then they can put their priorities and objectives for the coming week and tick off what they accomplished the previous week. So it's this great way to create organizational-wide visibility into what you're doing, or visibility with your team and your manager into how you're progressing against your goals, any blockers. But as a leader, I can see the pulse of my organization. Is something going wrong? Is everything going right? Where should I dig in? You can reach out, have individual conversations with people who might have put that they're feeling a 1. And so it's a nice way in this environment we're operating in, just to have a finger on the pulse.
That's awesome. And, I can't help but think that she just brought up building out sales enablement. Nadia, how does that make you feel? She's like, yay, cool. You guys should chat. No, yeah. I would say too, again, I'm going off script here, but last year from our sales, our sales cycle, I would definitely say the feedback that we were seeing from our reps was that, because our tool is designed for managers, directors, VPs, those sales leaders, for them to sort of motivate and, gamify sales, but then also get a handle on and programmatically, we integrate with Gong, like working with all those tools to bring it together and sort of quantify what the tool stacks are doing. But Nadia, the thing that happened the most that we saw were that sales enablement people were never really in our sales conversations previously. They weren't really stakeholders in, it would be a VP that would be like, yeah, we need this, or we have this initiative, and that's great. But now sales enablement became like the shining stars. They became the leaders of that sentiment and making sure that reps have what they need to truly be successful in things that I think were taken for granted a little bit in office and in person. So yeah, tell me more. You guys, I'm sure use Seismic, but did you guys see that shift as well of sales enablement really becoming like the heroes?
Yeah, great points there. So what I would say is now, like sales enablement, they now have a seat at the revenue table, right? And because so many companies are growing so rapidly and hiring new folks, especially during this global pandemic, what happens is you want to make sure you enable your reps, right? How are you enabling them? How are you onboarding them? What is their fastest time to revenue? And a lot of that is spearheaded now by ops. Sales enablement is playing a critical role on influencing a lot of those decisions. And so, and we're in a fortunate space where Seismic's done, really well during the last 18 months or so during the downturn. And it's because organizations have realized it's such a critical tool in their tech stack because it's enabling them to allow their sellers to be much more optimized in a shorter amount of time. And so for me, like that's a critical tool. I've always used it, right? Being an employee here, but now it's allowed me to double down on other areas. So like my global teams right now, their behaviors have changed wildly. They did like 95% of their sales in person. Like think about these global, massive 7-figure deals. And now they're doing it behind a computer. So what does that mean for them? And being able to look at the analytics and data around what that's telling me around, are they enabled? And it's just not for new reps. It's also reps that have been here a while. Like what is helping them in that journey to go from a phase 1 to a phase 5? And how do we shorten sales cycle? So there's so much meat there. And I do think that sales enablement leaders certainly should have a voice. And I think a lot of organizations are coming around to that, or even hiring sales enablement professionals for the first time.
Absolutely. That is so awesome. So
I would love to hear from the panelists about video. Are y'all, because the folks that I'm talking to are implementing more and more video, whether it's there's a ton of different solutions out there, but are y'all seeing that within your org, using more video, whether it's in email, whether it's in LinkedIn, any which way, video?
I have a couple of my sales reps that are using like Vidyard on like a trial basis to do a lot of outbounding. The data's still out there, right? We're still trying to gather whether it works or not. But I think any communication forum outside of just the typical email is tending to do better because everyone has email overload. So when I get a message or a cold call that's on video, I almost always listen to it because I know the time and effort that went into it.
100%. Yeah. One of our top reps recorded a rap and it was incredibly good and started sending his rap out. And like, I know, Larry, are you about to spit some bars? I will stop this webinar and it will become a concert and I'm fine with that. But yeah, he just had this really fun, innovative idea and no one coached him to do it. I think he like recorded it, like he wasn't using a tool. And then we immediately were like, let's maybe invest in something so that everyone can do this if this is the way that they're choosing to do it. And I think we are seeing a lot of like individualization of if we're giving them templates, but letting them get creative too, which I think has been a really cool movement. Are you guys seeing that as well? Or is it pretty regimented of, stick to this formula or how?
No, I think people like it better and we know, we're helping people with marketing and we know that authenticity trumps production. And so advising our customers and our people, like, just take it with your phone and that works really well. And there's 2 ways in addition to talking with customers that we're using video. One is I do 100% of my communications video. And the reason I do that is because I was spending so much time thinking about the right way to convey how I was feeling. In email, when I'm talking about something, should people, am I excited about it? Am I concerned about it? And so it was just a much quicker and authentic way to communicate with the team globally. And then the second thing is we're leveraging video as we're teaching reps new skills. So they'll create a video of themselves doing a new pitch and send it to their manager and their manager can comment on it. And so instead of like, oh, we didn't have time to connect to do it, our schedules didn't sync, we can still give the reps really good coaching through this video technology of practicing and role playing.
I love that. So I do want to, since this is about tackling the Great Resignation, I do want to, we talked about the positive ways that we're staying aligned, keeping them pumped up, all that good stuff. And really that's encapsulated by this term culture. It's been said, we say it all the time. And on the marketing side at Ambition, we're always like, how do we actually productize culture? How do we talk about that? There are lots of different philosophies there. But I think taking a step back to why people are leaving, there's, some of the things we touched on, like a perceived lack of flexibility or straight up no flexibility. We have some questions from the audience that are going to dig into it a little bit more that I do want to get to. But on that same webinar with Bobby at Intuit, there was also Angus McGeehee from VMware, and he leads the sales team, international sales team over there. And he had this quote. He said, people are going stir crazy. They don't know what they want to change, but something they can control is their employer. So it isn't necessarily that they're just mad at you or unhappy with the environment that you're creating and the things you can control. Sometimes you're combating more of an existential crisis right now. Like we're all kind of going through that. And so that puts us all in a really unique position. There are things we can control and there are things that we cannot control. So Jennifer, I do want to start with you here because you shared with me when we met, I sort of asked about, retention efforts at Pendo. And you mentioned that, while you guys had lost some reps, as everyone did, and as everyone does, you were able to save one, and she's now actually part of a program. A program came from this interaction. So I would just love what you can share, what you feel comfortable sharing about that conversation, and just really how you uncovered what she needed to be successful.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that we all know is happening that is, on a direct collision course with the fact that people are, a little discontent, I want control over something, is that the market is insanely hot right now for tech sales reps, like insanely hot. We have sales reps that are getting hit up 3 times a week by recruiters. And, that goes back to why checking in, touching base, and having open communication with your employees is so important. Asking them how they are and asking them what they want and what they need and what their career aspirations were. And in this case in particular, we had a top performing rep who, was hit up by another organization who promised her a path to grow, and she jumped on that opportunity. And what we uncovered as we had a follow-up conversation was that she didn't recognize that there were growth opportunities for her here at Pendo. And I think the learning was we need to get ahead of that. We need to be having these conversations proactively. But we also realized, gosh, what a great opportunity to develop a future leader through one of our new L&D programs. And that pilot program you mentioned is back to manager development. How do we identify top performing ICs and put them through something to help them know that they can grow at Pendo?
I love that. And I have a follow-up, again, off script question, but, often we see that, people just get promotions maybe on the sales side via the numbers. Maybe we're just looking at like, who's the top performer? Okay, we're going to go to that person and ask them what they want. Do you need more money, or do you want to grow? Do you want to be the manager? What's the deal? But I think that what you just touched on is really, really important, which is that you may not have pegged that person as who you're going to go through first. You also have a giant roster of people that you're just looking at the numbers and just looking at the metrics. You may miss some of these opportunities. So I do love the idea of having that program, but also would love any other sort of anecdotes. If you guys have maybe noticed that someone had a special set of skills. We talk about this a lot. We've recently hired a few like teachers, because the skill sets that you hire for now are almost entirely different in a really positive way than the skill sets that maybe we would have hired for in the past. People would have hired for maybe this masculine ideal hunter. And really now you need somebody that knows how to control a bunch of people on a Zoom, command their attention and get them to listen and be quiet. And guess who's real good at that? Someone who taught second grade and who has a different skill set. And so just curious if any of you guys have had similar interactions with reps where maybe you notice something now that maybe you wouldn't have noticed in the past because of this shift in what we've gone through, and how you might honor that.
Yeah, I love the part that Jennifer mentioned around like just like career pathing and all of that. I just want to comment on that, because I think that we have those conversations like at a high level, but I think it's important, especially even when someone starts, right? They're like, I want to come in, I want to make a big splash here, but I think we should start having conversations sooner. ideally in your mind, where would you like to go? And it's okay if you don't know the answers. Like my role is to help give you visibility when the time is right, give you the resources and skill sets. And I think documenting a career trajectory or path is also very important to that person, because I know that I've had, conversations, like skip level conversations with people like reps. And I think I'm a clear communicator. And we would talk about a number of things like, okay, you want to get into leadership, but you also want to go into the enterprise team, and trying to help them formulate it and give them action items. But I think it's also very different when someone says, hey, this is the plan that we've identified and we want your buy-in, and like having it in writing. So I think like Jennifer's point is like so on point there. And I would just take it one step further, like documenting a career path, I think speaks volumes for people. And it's okay if it's 2 years down the road, 4 years, and that can change too, right? But it's what are the new skills I'm getting outside of my day-to-day? And I think that that helps people stretch a little bit more than what they tend to do. Sorry for going out on a tangent.
No, I think that's great. And honestly, you teed me up to do a shameless plug, because we actually added, so our coaching platform, we added a feature, and I promise this is not an ambition commercial, but we added a feature for that very purpose. People could always document their coaching one-on-ones there, but the action plan piece and it being tied to quantifiable metrics and records and things like that, and just having that thing to look back week over week and go, okay, both for the rep and the manager, like, are we really tracking to like where they want to be? Like, so that those conversations stop being anecdotal and actually start being, like we built the thing that we needed ourselves, basically, because I do think it is really important to have that place to look back and see. So I go back to, I mentioned the word culture earlier, and we use it really liberally in these conversations as this sort of vague way that we combat churn, and how we improve it, maintain it, amplify it, teach it, put programs around it. But I guess the question I want to ask really everyone here is, at your organization, whether or not you think everyone in your org gets the culture at your company. Obviously you guys do, you are selling it or wanting to sell it internally. And what are some examples at your organizations to sort of bring value every day? I mean, it sounds like you guys are doing the right things by having these conversations, being really passionate about career pathing. But when you think just about culture being something more than like free food and ping pong and whatever those things might be, how do you build that? What is the culture, I guess, at Hootsuite, Pendo, and Seismic? And how hard is it to get people to latch onto it and understand it?
Yeah, so I can start. At Hootsuite, we are going through a cultural transformation right now. We're about to turn 13 years old. And so we're building on the foundation of our founding culture to get us ready for what's ahead of us. And so a lot of that is about reinforcing what the new culture looks like. So one of the pieces that I talk with my organization about a lot is this idea of a no spectators attitude. Like, we're not sitting back and judging what we could be doing better and pointing fingers. We're actually stepping up and sharing out and saying, I want to be part of this future. And here's the idea that I have. And so we have an acronym that goes along with it, which is GIAT, which is give it a try. And that goes with one of our guiding principles of go fast, be agile. And it's important for all the leaders and managers to demonstrate that giving it a try is okay. Yeah. And so that is sometimes sharing where maybe I gave it a try and it didn't work. And that's okay, because this is what we learned from it. And this is how we're taking it forward. So it's about like modeling the new behaviors that we want to see. And another program that we have in place are these stretch programs that are formalized. And so in sales, we all know, like, maybe you can only sell the same thing for so long before you're like, enough already, I need to sell something different. And so with these stretch programs, our sales folks have been able to redo the onboarding program and step outside and do something different, or partner with product on what the roadmap's going to look like. And it builds empathy across the organization, and it also reinvigorates people on why they're doing what they're doing and what we are beyond just the sales conversations they're having every day.
And you guys are hiring? Because I bet people are going to want to work there now.
We have so many opportunities with the growth. So
I didn't intend for the question to be this, but I was like, damn, that sounds really cool.
And the way you positioned it, like she was starting to sell me. I was like, whoa.
Nadia's like, what's your title again? Okay.
Let's talk afterwards.
So Nadia, can you kind of, to your point, yeah, now this is a pitch off. Pitch Seismic. Now, what's the culture like at Seismic? Is it similar? And do you feel like do they get it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a very transparent environment, right? So I think that it's a two-way communication street, right? The leadership, our CEO, our CRO, they're phenomenal at being overly transparent. Where the company's going through all the COVID stuff, like the uncertainty, the growth, like they're very, very forthcoming with information. And it's literally like a big family. That's what I say. And we try to have that trickle down into our organizations as well, right? Let's have a transparent conversation. You tell me feedback, vice versa, like what makes it better. And I think that each team is a team that we've created almost a spin-off of that overarching, transparent, work hard, be great at what you do, be very empathetic. I think the empathy part is even more profound now, right? Because you don't know what people are dealing with. You don't know their current situation, their family situation, their childcare situation, and you try to ask those things. But sometimes, I think mental health, especially now, like we're starting to talk about it as an org. Like you'll see a couple of my managers and reps like doing podcasts and talking about it because they've also gone through this trajectory. So it's being transparent, being empathetic, and just really working hard at the end of the day.
Yeah. What about Pendo? Drinking from the fire hose. What's it taste like?
Yeah, to chime in, drinking from the fire hose, but so many new people are. And so because of that, it's incredibly important that we're assessing whether or not our culture is living on in our new hires, and whether what we had in place when we were a 200-person organization translates to a 900-person organization. So in FY22, we've actually gone through a complete reevaluation of our culture, reevaluation of our value statements. Are these the right ones, or have we evolved as an organization? And we've actually realized that we've evolved as an organization and we've made some changes. So once you make the changes, how do we communicate these? And how do we help our teams really deeply understand them? And what our people team did, along with our exec team, which was really cool, is for each one of our value tenants, we have a bit of a Goldilocks approach to help people really understand, what does it mean? What's too much? What's just right? And what's too little? And with real examples. And it helps the people, it helps the team internalize it and really understand what it means to be right there in that sweet spot.
I love that. Well, and there's a couple of questions. And again, if you're on the call and you have some questions, let me know. But Larry, in chatting with you before we hopped on this webinar, you're consulting now, but you are good at what you do now because you were so good at what you did when you were a frontline manager. And I think one of the most important things to realize in this conversation is you can't save them all. You can't keep everyone. I think Melissa said it in our call, you feel every single one that leaves. It's not, oh, so many people are leaving. Every single person is a part of that culture, makes up that team. But Larry, when we talked, as per usual, you inspired the hell out of me. I was like, well, I should just let you tell this story. So Larry, I'm going to make you tell me the story right now, and everyone else, of the person that came to you that was a seller that had a career pivot that they wanted to make, and what you did.
Yeah, so it was one of my lead gen reps, and I'm a big believer that we all own our own business. I don't care if your umbrella is Hootsuite, Pendo, Seismic. You better be running Larry Long Jr. LLC underneath that umbrella. And I believe that we should all have our own business plan. So my reps each had their own business plan, and reps would say, what should I include? I don't know, it's your business plan. So one of my reps, Cameron, he put in his business plan that he wanted to be a physical therapist, and he wanted to go to PT school. And we said, hey, this is an avenue, a path for you to get there as long as you're taking care of business. And we keep score. That's what I love about sales, the quantitative, but on the qualitative, how can I help empower you as a person to get to the goals that you want to get to? Now, I'm sad that it's not within these four walls of the company, but I'm going to do everything in my power to get you there. So he had to take some time off to do some shadowing, to get his hours in, ended up going to MUSC, the Medical University of South Carolina. He's now working as a physical therapist, was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but now he's chilling in Puerto Rico. So that's just a success story that I love, because he was working in sales, but he knew that his vision, he knew that his path was taking him elsewhere, and he just leveraged those skills, leveraged the opportunity. And I had the privilege. I was Melissa, I was a witness. I mean, I helped him to get there, but it's just amazing to see. And now when he's posting in Puerto Rico, I'm like, I got to get down there.
Well, I think it's just such a great point, you know, in all of our roles as we interact with our colleagues, our people that we manage, that sort of thing. Like, yes, we are here to do a job, but in Larry's example, I love, he still did the job. Like, and instead of just up and quitting and then saying like, I want to be a physical therapist, Larry was able to actually change someone's life. And that person also still contributed, still did his job. There was still this beautiful path where you sort of, both of you left things better than you found them, which I just think is a kind of warm and fuzzy thing, but it's something I think it's good to not lose sight of, because it is easy to get mired in just the money and the metrics and that kind of stuff. And so I love that story, Larry. So for our last 10 minutes, I am going to pivot to some questions and registration, because I think they're really, really great. And we've got one from Kenneth, which I love because we haven't really talked about this yet, which is, how much is comp factoring into attrition right now? I mean, obviously it's a reps market. I would argue any candidate's market right now in SaaS specifically. So yeah, how much is money factoring in when people are leaving?
So,
sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Sadia. I'll maybe like share something that's a little kind of controversial on this. Like, anytime a frontline manager comes to me and says, so-and-so is leaving because they're getting X% bump and they just couldn't say no, I think something happened that led them to take that conversation. If you got all the way to the point where you know what that offer is, there are other things. And I think we let ourselves off the hook by saying these people pay more, because it's just, there's like no disputing that. And it's almost like a get out of jail free card. Like, oh, well, we couldn't match that, so like we have to let them go. It's like, no, someone reached out to them. They could have said no, but they said yes. Why did they say yes? That's the real reason they left. And so that's, I think, what we have to work with our frontline managers on, is how do you prevent them from actually taking that conversation?
I saw Nadia like saying a yes. What do you think?
What I was going to say, right? It's what happens prior to that. So like you hit it right on the head. Like there's some underlying factors, right? And most companies are pretty competitive. And I think that money is actually just an excuse. Right now, it's different if you're not paying market value and the comp plan is horrible. That is a valid concern, right? If they can't earn whatever they expected, right? And they're doing all the right things and they're a top performer. But I don't think that is the case in many situations.
I'm sorry, Jen.
I love it. Everyone's like me.
I 100% agree. And to Nadia's point, there really isn't that much differential. If you're an organization that's paying at a certain percentile that you feel comfortable with in the markets that you're playing in, there really isn't that much of a disparity. And if that conversation does happen, then like it should never be a race to the bottom, if you will. Like it means that something else is going wrong, and you either have not been in touch with that employee and connected to that employee, or they don't know what their growth potential is within the organization or what the organization's growth potential is.
Yes.
So spot on. And Jamie, I know you mentioned earlier Intuit. I used to work for Intuit, and they talked about client delight. NPS scale is 0 to 10. Where are you? Well, what about our reps and our employee delight? And I have the pleasure of working as an advisor for RepView, which is pretty much a rating system for sales organizations. And the data, when you look at the data, you're absolutely right, Melissa, Nadia, and Jen. It's not just the numbers. Does it have an impact? For sure. But I can tell you, reps these days, they're looking for culture, and they want to be in a place where they feel like I am somebody. And essentially, how do you feel that? Well, you got to show me what you're working with, in the words of that great philosopher, Mystical. You can't just tell me, you got to show me. And essentially, they're looking for that big hug, as Melissa talked about. Show me how much you love me. So it's, I can tell you, the markets are heating up, and it's on us as leaders to make sure that our people feel loved and feel cared for, because they can smell BS from a mile away. And looking at the data, there's some organizations out there that are BSing all the way, and it's not looking good in the future.
I love that. And I am a firm believer that a lot of people start to look because of something between their manager and themselves, their frontline leader, right? Most people leave because of bad leaders or a mismatch of style. So I think it really goes back to that. And so if I have a FLM come to me and they're like, this person is leaving because of money, I ask them to do a little bit of self-reflection and come back to me with, potential other reasons. Are they areas that we can solve for? If not, it's okay. Like, I don't even know if I want someone here if they don't want to be here and they're not bought in and all that. But is there something that's repairable, maybe a different team or something like that? And that's where I think that having those conversations are really important. As second line leaders or third line leaders, I also think it's really critical to have skip levels, right, with the reps, and make sure that those are environments that are very confidential. And that if they want to share feedback about their leader or some things within that team culture that need to be improved upon, that we do those things. But the money part is such a cop out.
Ooh, you thought it was going to be controversial.
No, everyone agrees. It's great.
I agree with you. Yeah, I definitely agree. From just my sort of bird's eye view, having these conversations, that seems to be the trend. If you're not sort of mitigating the looking, then that's where it starts. So last question, just a little shift. So Sasha wanted to know, this is just a fun one about SDRs, who I love talking about. So tips for getting an SDR team off the ground. Tips and tricks. That's a big question because it's a whole webinar. Tips and tricks for making it the best team and creating a great experience for new employees. I think we talked a lot about onboarding, but I think sometimes, and granted, I know there's lots of diversity of ages and all kinds of different people do the SDR role, but by and large, it is still seen as a sort of a starting point in a lot of sales careers. And so just want to talk about that. Like how do we take these sweet little baby SDRs, new and old, and make sure they're having a great experience and it isn't just a horrible slog.
Yeah, I know at Seismic, what we like to do is do that career pathing, and we usually farm from within, right? That's like the best talent. They know our value prop, they know the messaging, they know who's who in the zoo just internally, they know our personas. I can go on and on. And essentially, that's where we go and look to, right, to fill our SMB mid-market types of teams. And they're the best talent. They end up having shorter ramp times, and we grow them within the organization. And so having those conversations early on with them, I think, is important because they're doing a job that is such a challenging job, right? It's very repetitive. And I think if they have that vision of like, hey, this isn't my forever, is important. I also think having alignment from SDRs to AEs in that role, and almost doing, I think, Jennifer, you mentioned like a pen pal, like a peer mentoring type of scenario, is really important, right? They're not necessarily peers, but you're aspiring to get to that level. That individual was in that seat prior to that. And I think that creating that culture around, we want to up level you, and hey, I did this role, here are some tips and tricks to help you get onboarded as well, and kind of keep your head in the game when things are, not going well and you're getting a ton of no's. So I think that some of those things have positively helped us for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll just add one thing. Everything you said is spot on. The mentorship, especially, I think, is incredibly important. Not only does the relationship with the AE help us do business better, but it really does help grow these SDRs we're investing in. The last thing I'll add is just make it fun. like gamify things, wear costumes, like play music. Like SDRs need to enjoy it. Like it is a hard slog. It's really repetitive. There's really tight metrics. They know they've got to do it for a certain period of time before they can move on. And you want them to know that like, we appreciate what you do, you know, pat them on the back, do a happy hour, bring them cupcakes, whatever it is, make sure that they're having fun.
Jen, I love that. You're talking about language. We're talking about fun. And in a world where you're striking out a lot, I would add on that the leadership of the SDRs is absolutely critical, because people don't leave companies, they leave their leaders. So if it's not fun, if I don't feel empowered, engaged, if I don't feel cared for, sayonara.
Yeah. And I think it's the knowing their effort is going somewhere.
Yeah.
So many times they book a meeting or create an opportunity and then they throw it over like no one picks it up. And how unmotivating is that? And so we have a new leader for sales productivity who also leads the SDRs. And she came to me last week, like week 3. She's like, Melissa, I wanted to redesign the SDR AE handoff. And she came up with something I'd never seen before, which is the SDR and the AE do the following call together. And so the SDR leads it off. Hey, prospect, based on what we talked about, XYZ, let me introduce you to this AE. And then they feel like it's happening. Then they also get to play a role and they get to listen in on the call.
I was going to say the
which
learning.
is training in the moment. So I was just so pleased that this woman just brought this to the forefront, because that's what I see with SDRs. They get disheartened when they feel like they're working so hard and the AEs are picking and choosing whether or not to move things forward instead of giving feedback on what needs to be done differently.
I love that. And it just creates that feedback loop so that as they learn there, maybe wasn't a good call, they can go back and they're going to be able to keep that from getting that far, because now they know what a quality is that isn't just a checklist. That is so smart. Guys, we're out of time. We're actually a minute over, and I'm sad because this conversation is so great. Yeah, thank you so much for joining again. We will get this recording to you. My brain is buzzing with all the ways I can chop and screw this. Like mystical. I don't know. Does he do that? Did he do that? But thank you so much. Shake it fast. Watch yourself. Show me what you're working with. You guys are the best. I did the edited version.
You're trying to drop the mic, Jamie. Whoa, watch out now.
Don't play with me, Larry. Yeah, no, this was an absolute joy. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye.